Hello everyone, and welcome to Sherlock Club, where I go over a different piece of Sherlock Holmes media in a monthly theme. This month's theme is Old-Fashioned Film Month, so we're going over different films that are before 1960. Intro question of the day today is, which is your favorite actor to portray Watson? Now, last week we talked about Sherlock Holmes, and I said that my overall pick is Jeremy Brett. And honestly, for Watson, I have no idea. There are so many beautiful, beautiful Watsons. I love David Burke and Edward Hardwicke both in the Granada series alongside Jeremy Brett. I love Vili Solomon as Watson in the Russian series. I adore, again, My Dearly Beloved Detective, and I feel like there are so many different Watsons, and my criteria is relatively basic. It's just, hey, make him smart and normal, please, and beautiful. So my pick also would be H. Marion Crawford, but overall, I'm not really sure. It's gotta be between Burke and Hardwicke. Ugh, actually distressing to me that I have to choose between them, so I'm not going to. Our diva of the week is Violet Hunter, and she is the client in The Copper Beeches. If you haven't read or seen it, I really suggest it. It's one of my favorites. It's a pretty cool gothic mystery. You wouldn't really think much of it until you really dive deep into what's happening, which I really appreciate. She's a very brave person, and she risks her life going on something that might be weird but might be normal, and really puts an inordinate amount of trust in Holmes and Watson, which I don't know if is a good thing. Her intelligence and bravery, as well as just her independence, really shows how much of a diva she is to me. Our adaptation of the week is the 1931 and beyond Sherlock Holmes film series starring Arthur Conan and Ian Fleming. No, not that Ian Fleming. Not the writer, the actor. I feel like I had to clarify, because if you know anything about detectives, you know about James Bond. This film series came out in 1931, which is about the same year as one of the Frankenstein films, as Dracula, as a bunch of other talkies that are pre-American Hays Code and just really, really good. While it's black and white, it's one of the first that includes sound and really adds to the stories. I feel like as much as William Gillette's portrayal and even Norwood's portrayal are really wonderful, they're kind of lacking in that aspect, and if you don't appreciate silent films, then I can see how it's really hard to take in. Besides, the advent of talkie films are just really important to film as a whole and culture. This is kind of a new version of Sherlock Holmes, and you have to really add that aspect of vocal tone and the whole sound aspect of a production. I think this part's interesting in Sign of the Four, which is, I believe, actually around the third or the fourth case. They switched Watson because Ian Fleming was too old. They gave Watson a younger look so that he could court Mary Morstan, which I thought was a really interesting choice, especially after they chose Arthur Conan and Ian Fleming, even though they knew that those two were kind of like on the older side. In fact, they tried to make Arthur Conan look a little bit younger because he was 57 when he played Sherlock Holmes. Now, if you don't know, Sherlock Holmes is supposed to be 27 in A Study in Scarlet. By the Sign of the Four, probably in his 30s. Along with a lot of other portrayals, Sherlock Holmes looks a lot older than he is in the canon, which I thought was really interesting. Now, this part makes me a little bit sad, because I think whenever you lose media, it's just really sad in general. The Missing Rembrandt, which I think is ironic of a name because it's about a missing piece of art, is a rework of Charles Augustus Milverton, which I think is interesting too, because the whole point about Milverton is that he's a blackmailer, but they really switched it up to make him an artist, and, like, I guess he stole the Rembrandt, but we'll never know, because even though it was a good film, it doesn't exist anymore. which is really sad. A lot of films back in the day were only used for showings in theaters and were soon thrown away afterward, especially if they weren't considered good. So there will be a lot of films you notice that are missing because they've only had 1 or 2 showings and then were not considered good. A lot of major film companies, if their films weren't good, they would drop them to the bottom of the ocean, they would reuse the film, they would just really destroy things that they didn't think were good, which is really sad because I probably would have thought that The Missing Rembrandt was good. I guess I'll have to make a time machine. After the film series ends, which I believe is only after 5 films total, which is not like Rathbone, not like Howard, not like a lot of other Sherlock Holmes things you will see. Usually they will try to adapt many of the stories, but they only adapted 5 in this series. So Arthur Wantner portrayed Holmes in the Boscombe Valley Mystery as a radio performance. And then, after that, another radio series came out that portrayed about, I believe, 54 of the 60 stories, which I thought was really fascinating. Well, this isn't a film series that we think of today as one that is particularly exceptional and show-stopping. I mean, if you're into the Sherlock Holmes universe, you will probably know about this series. But to the average observer, they probably only know of the modern ones, maybe Rathbone, maybe Brett. If you know anything about Sherlock Holmes, you must know about Vincent Starrett. He's written so many essays, he's written The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, he's written poems. He's just overall a very large contributor to the Sherlock Holmes fandom. Yes, I said fandom. And he said that Arthur Wantner was probably the best Sherlock Holmes ever, which, I mean, if he likes it, that's gotta be saying something. I actually watched a little bit of the first movie and thought that Wantner's portrayal was really wonderful. On to our creative prompt of the week. Since we're talking about old films, I wanted to ask you if there are any slower-paced films or media that is just older that you think is really good and that you would recommend today. Now, I love a lot of different old films. Humphrey Bogart is one of my biggest, I don't want to say celebrity crushes, because that's not quite right. I'm pretty parasocial about him. I like him a lot. I love the classic Universal monsters, and I even go to my cinema's local showings of classic movies once a week, which, if your cinema does that or somewhere near you has a classic movie night, please go. It really gives you a glimpse into a different, perspective. Now, for what I would recommend that is slower paced or, older in style, The Night Nurse. I recommend it because I've watched it recently and I thought that it was absolutely wonderful. Basically, this nurse is working for a family with 2 small children who are very sick. However, as you see her, conversations with the doctor unfold and her conversations with the family, you really see, what's really happening. Now, Barbara Stanwyck is wonderful as Laura Hart, and I think it's very interesting that they have a kind of portrayal of those kind of underground, seedy guys that know a guy. That's the main love interest, which you never really see after the early 1930s because of the Hays Code. So I think that's really something that people should look into, and it really portrays that kind of underside to some of America that we don't really get to see in films. Finally, your homework. I want you to watch Sherlock Holmes' Final Hour, at least the first 20 minutes of it. Okay, I'll make a compromise with you, at least the first 20 minutes, because I just adore it. It's so sweet and wonderful, and I think that even if Watson's character isn't quite right, Wantner does a really good Holmes. Just absolutely wonderful. He is very sweet and surprisingly nice, and you wouldn't really expect it because he looks kind of sinister, but don't even worry about that. I also want you to do some research on lost films. I know, it sounds boring, and it might even sound woke if you look into it the wrong way. I don't care. I want you to learn about the things that we've lost, why they weren't deemed as important, and I want you to see that most of our films are lost, and we're missing out on so much of our media, and it's actually just kind of heartbreaking. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you learned something today. I learned a lot when I was researching this today. That's all for me. Make sure to like and subscribe, even though it doesn't really do anything for me, actually. I'm just kidding. It makes me feel like I have friends. Hi. Anyway, love you so much. Peace out.